Okay, so many people have been talking about and wondering about how COVID got quite so bad in the United States. Well, a writer for the New York Times suggests that part of the problem is American culture itself, that they are a libertarian society, distrustful of government. So what do you think? Are you worried about how this will affect Canada? And how do you think things got quite so bad in the U.S.?
Listen, I completely disagree with the person that wrote that article and puts it on, American culture. I put this squarely on the shoulders of Donald Trump, who played down this pandemic at the very beginning, calling it a flu, saying it would disappear, in the colder months, and then politicizing it, calling it the China virus, saying that people who wore masks weren't wearing the mask to protect themselves, but to show disapproval of him. This is not a partisan issue. This is a pandemic. And so he did that, continues to do that. What do we have? 60,000 new cases in the US today. The epicenter of this global pandemic is now Arizona. The Sun Belt states are not doing well. Those are states that Donald Trump won in 2016. He has not led. He is not led, and he refuses to lead. And then on top of it, reopened everything too soon. Why did he reopen too soon? Because the economy is his last source of strength. If he is going to win the country again, it's going to be because the economy is doing well. So what does he do? Reopen, get things started, get the kids back to school, because that is his only leg to stand on right now. This is on him, and people have paid a dear price. People have paid with their lives.
Well, let's go to social media. Jen on Twitter says, Trump anti-vaxxers, governors in Georgia, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, etc., who opened up too soon, the lack of universal health care, mentality of masks somehow impeding freedom. I could go on. Yes, Jen, you could. But I believe that Trump isn't the cause of the American culture that we're seeing right now, that he's a symptom of it. And it's, I don't know about you, but try to imagine a more perfect symbolic figure to represent what that culture is and how it became that way. An interesting thought experiment I did before this. Try to imagine, for instance, Mike Pence holding sway in the same way that Trump does. And the U.S., it's such a paradox. If you think about this country having the minds that has produced incomparable art, film, literature, but also having minds that produce the most anti-intellectual conspiracy theories known today in the world. And the mistrust of government, I can actually understand why there is a huge mistrust of government. There is reason to believe this. There have been unnecessary wars. The U.S. has installed dictators in foreign countries to help serve their purposes. It just feels like this is part and parcel of a very long erosion of trust in public institutions that maybe has culminated in big business, post-recession. And for America, not to get too grim here, but what is there left to believe in besides gods and guns? Trump has become, if you will, the perfect man for these times. And before we get too smug and think that we are, we don't have the hostility to science that our neighbors do. I mean, come on. Just yesterday, we've seen this viral story of this woman who was refused service at a Toronto hospital because she didn't want to wear a mask. And then she and a bunch of her friends showed up at Dundas Square here in Toronto protesting. They even rode the TTC to get there, putting, who knows, hundreds of people maybe at risk because they choose hugs over masks. And the ringleader, the woman who was denied the access to the hospital, said, why do our rights have to be suppressed so that somebody else would feel better? And she's a self-proclaimed truther, by the way, which are rising and rising in this country.
Oh, boy. Listen, I agree with you on all those fronts, Jess. I'll take it back to Canada for a second. There was an amazing map that was put up by CTV News yesterday or the day before showing just how bad the situation is in the United States and how much better we have managed the situation here and our numbers to continue to decline. But I want to talk about how long can we sustain this? Our biggest trading partner is America. Our border remains closed. Yeah. How long can we keep it this way until we are in really worse financial situation. We've got an economic snapshot coming out today with our finance minister, Bill Morneau, and he's expected to announce that we're $250 billion with a B in the hole this year in a deficit as a result of pandemic spending and so many other factors. So tourism, that's not happening. 1 in 11 jobs in this country relies on tourism. America alone stands for over $11 billion in tourism money in this country a year. How long can we keep it this way? I am worried for us.
I think it's a really interesting question, but I'm terrified of even doing a thought experiment with that. Mark on Facebook wrote to us and said, as much as you want to blame Trump, you have to blame the American people. They see what's going on in the world. And Mark, I think you can blame both. I think you can blame it all, because they did have huge warning signs. Like, we basically had the advantage of seeing what was happening across the ocean and what was happening in other communities and trying to take their lead. And I think Canada has done a better job, not perfect by any means. And I think for all the reasons you've just said, that the states have found themselves in this predicament. But we cannot forget part of the reason is because their healthcare system is so fraught. Let's just put it that way. And my mother sent me this viral video a couple weeks ago, and it was a Canadian truck driver, I believe, who was going back and forth to the U.S. And he was in an accident, and he had to go into a clinic as part of protocol. And he recorded this video because he was so concerned of seeing people who were coming into the clinic who had symptoms of COVID and who didn't have insurance and couldn't afford to pay for the test to find out. And those people walked right back out the door and into the public. So I think, again, you cannot talk about how things got so bad in the U.S. without looking at their healthcare system.